Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40k, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Drukhari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craft Worlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40k stuff? My name is Ben Crone Barber, and I know pretty much fuck all about 40k. With me is my co-host Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Hello there.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40k.
True.
And my dear brother Darren.
Good morning.
Who knows so much about 40k it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance. Ignorance.
Blah, 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 blah.
That intro had a surprising lack of disruptions. Are you both feeling okay?
I'm all right. Darren sounded a little bit, I don't know. You all right, buddy? You all right, Darren?
I'm feeling very formal this morning, Mr. Allen.
Oh, really?
Brother Allen.
I'm a little
Brother
worried.
Well, it's the chaos
scared.
episode, so I thought I'd go the other way.
Somber up.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Somber
yeah.
up. Yeah.
Oh god, that doesn't sound fun.
The chaos episode. That sounds like it's going to be a whistle-stop tour. That shouldn't take too long, right?
Yeah, we only have to deal with the entirety of the warp, its influences on the real, in quotes, galaxy, all the gods, demons, and their influences.
The name Chaos is the name Chaos Gods. I guess I've thoroughly developed a lisp. This is going to be my voice for the rest of the show now. Chaos. Was chaos a term coined by the Imperium to the gods, or did the gods say, we are chaos gods, we are chaos? Chaos didn't exist till we came about.
No, it was a rebrand. They were called Messy before.
No, it wasn't. It's actually, they were rebanded. They were formed in the late 70s. I believe they went under the name ABBA.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were referred to as the Spoopel gods.
Yeah. And they went through
which
a
I
series
believe
of
is
names.
Dutch.
Yeah. Anti-good just didn't really, non-heinous didn't really, oh no, just heinous.
No, it was the other meaning. They were the disorganized gods.
They're like, fuck it, guys, let's crank up to 11 and rip the knob off. So what was what?
Answer my question.
Yes, your question. Okay. When a mummy cat and a daddy cat love each other. All right, different question.
That is fucking chaos. I hear that at like 1 o'clock in the morning outside the window, and it's the sound. It's the sound of hell.
Yeah, well, maybe don't set up a little cat bed outside your window, you pervert.
With some like red
voyeur.
lights and some sexy music.
And you're just there looking at them, rubbing catnip on your face. Yeah?
Yeah. Don't look at the cameras. Just look at me. Look at me. Don't look at the cameras.
It has always been...
I don't care anymore. Let's get on with the show.
I'm moving on.
The train has left the station.
Before we get into the topic of chaos, we haven't actually been sent any messages on this show so far. I know that there have been numerous in the other ones, but we have been sent a message. So,
dude, I've had bags of hate mail. I don't know about you guys.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Crowd, because this particular message is in fact about you. It looks like you're in trouble, pal.
Sugar. Okay.
Here we go. To the flagship Laying Down the Lore. This is Lord Inquisitor Randall McDangle of the Ordo Hereticus, with a message for one Christopher Crowlin Allen.
What are you saying?
Citizen, you have appeared on our radar one too many times to be ignored. Your refusal to absorb the Imperial Truth, well-delivered Xenos information, and generally anything that happened in the last 2 weeks, is borderline heretical. And if there's one thing the Ordo Hereticus will not tolerate, it's heresy! And people from Grantham. Mark my words, citizen. You are but a few wrong answers away from a frontal lobotomy and an eternity as a weird floating skull thing. To that degree, we will be issuing 4 Inquisition-approved recap questions to your comrades each episode. We will check in periodically, and if your score drops below 90% for that period, we will authorize your immediate capture and conversion into a mindless servant of the Imperium. Tread carefully, citizen.
Oh, Kral.
I mean, I'll save you the trouble. I'm just going to submit now. I'm just going to surrender myself. I'm going to lobotomize myself. Because, mate, you can threaten me with all you like. You know, I don't choose to be an idiot. Like, it's genetic. Like,
I was born this way.
Yeah. And that's fine. I'm fine with that. You know, it's everyone else's problem, not mine. So.
Well. I mean, there was a kind of glazed look on your face as we were listening to that message. So yeah, it's almost like you knew it was coming.
What message?
Exactly.
was that from our Discordy Randall McDowell?
Well, yeah, you may recognize the name. That particular Inquisitor is one of our patrons. So thank you to him and the other patrons who contributed to that.
Thanks for the threat, Randall.
You bastard. Right, so I've got these 4 questions here, Kral. So our understanding is that like the Inquisitor is going to check in periodically. So it could be in a couple of episodes time, it could be in 10 episodes time, but you got to aim for that 90%. Otherwise, it's monotask servitor type for you.
Yeah. Come on, bring it on. Come at me. Let's go.
The last episode we talked about Necromunda dude.
Yep.
And we talked about the actual city, but we also talked about the wastelands. What was the name of the faction that lived in the wastelands of Necromunda?
They were known as the Ash Nomads, but I don't know if that was actually their faction name.
You gotta give it to him. You gotta give it to him.
I don't know. Would Inquisitor Randall McDangle accept that? I mean, it's not quite that.
Yeah, I accept
okay.
it.
All right. He's got it. It's the Ash Wastes Nomads.
Yeah. Well, seeing as Randall isn't courteous enough to turn up to the show and co-host himself, but I think we do need someone to adjudicate this, and maybe Darren's probably the most qualified. Can I just suggest that?
Okay.
Can I just kind of?
I'm sure the Inquisitor would allow that
with your newfound authority.
help you. Not get turned into.
I'm going to go for Ash Nomads because that's all I can kind of remember.
Okay, so it was Ash Waste Nomads. Okay, so you got that one. Well done. We then talked about the actual hive jobby, the big spiky thing. We talked about the layers. How many layers were in the city?
There's many, but I remember in Hive Primus there were 3 layers. At the very top, you had the House of Helmoir, where they lived in absolute opulency. Below that, and that was above the clouds. It was sunny every day, la la la. And then just below that, where it's still pretty pleasant, or pleasanter, relatively speaking, you had all the nobles, the movers and shakers that ran Necromunda, and then below that, you had everybody else that supported it. It was all a big tower card space. So I'm going to say 3. There were 3 layers.
Okay.
At least in Hive Primus.
I think you're right in that there are 3 layers, but there were also another 3 as well. Do you want the list? So you were wrong, yes. So it was okay. So you were right. It was the upper spire and lower spire were the first 2 that you got. There's the wall, which you missed. Then there's the Hive City, which you got. Then there's the Underhive and the Sump.
Ah, yes, that's right. The Sump, my favorite part of the Hive. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We also then talked about the clan houses.
Yeah.
Of which there were 6. Can you name 3 of them?
Fuck. I can describe several of them. So there were the Amazonian style, mainly matriarchal people, even though there's no rainforest on Necromunda. They were like the poison and drug specialists.
Okay, I'll give you one clue because that's a really impressive summary of them. Think about stairs going the wrong way.
MC Escher.
It was the Escher clan. Clan
yes,
Escher.
Yes, that was it. Clan Escher, because it sounded a bit like Eshin. That's right. And I was like, ooh, Escher, they're obviously going to be No, they're going to be big Amazonian women that cook up meth and stuff. Okay, there were the knowledge brokers that looked like bold Neos. I can't remember what they were called either. I can't remember any names. I'm going to be honest. Okay. There were the biker gang. There were that's 3. There were more. Yeah, I can't remember now. I'm not going to waste any airtime. Go on, remind me what the other 3 were.
Okay, so you got Escher, big hulking dudes. They were the Goliath.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, that's right.
The Cawdor. Which one were those? What there?
The Cawdor was the ones that look like medieval peasants, but they were the House of the Faithful. So they are the ones that kind of are craven
fanatical
for the imperial religion. Yeah,
craven for a praying.
There was the bald techie guys, which I think Kral mentioned. Are they the Orlocks?
No. The bald guys are the kind of spy masters and information brokers, as Kral said. They're the Delac.
Delac. That's the ones, yeah.
Like Deloitte.
The biker guys are the Orlocks.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
And there's one more that sound like they're from somewhere on the German border.
I mean, I know.
Don't do it, Ben. Ben, don't do it.
I was gonna say,
don't do it.
Mate, I'll leave that one to you. So, and then there was a 6th one. The Vans.
The Vans.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
All right, Grau. Final question. Okay. You are 2 for 3 so far. What chapter of Space Marine has a monastery on Necromunda?
The Imperial Fist.
He's nailed it.
He's nailed it. He's nailed it. Well done, Kral. Well done.
Sorry.
So that was 50.
Guess 50%. What I listened to on my dog walk this morning prior to recording this show.
Oh, dear.
Not well enough, it seems.
I mean, I don't know. That wasn't really 90%, was it? Really? Shall I get rid of my frontal lobal cortex now? And just live on hassle.
It's
it's over a series of records.
It's over a period, isn't it? Yeah. So over, yeah.
So I can accumulate.
So you have to have your period, and then we'll
when the. Okay, cool. So
I'm going to discuss this with you over a period.
When the Inquisitors come and do their random check-in, as long as I at that point have 90%,
exactly.
I'm all right. So I could have nothing now, but we don't know what's going to happen. Could happen tomorrow.
And they've asked us to keep a track of the score, so we'll keep an ongoing.
Okay, so you're under as much pressure as I am. Then what happens to you?
Not
if you
really.
Don't keep the score.
The show falls apart.
It implodes.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom. Okay, cool.
Right,
I think you two were kind of like quite surprised about how much I could remember then, even if I couldn't really.
Well, I was, and
you both were kind of like stunned into silence.
I'm almost as surprised at this as I was as when Ben came forth in the pub quiz.
Yeah, I mean that is a fraction of how fucking surprised I was. I was like, don't say that on the podcast, it was luck. That's what it was. It's because it was multiple choice. I'm really good at multiple choice, or really lucky at multiple choice. I don't know what the. Anyway, well, that was good, Kral. Well done. We'll have to come up with it.
Yeah, Necromunda. What a cool place. What a cool, harrowing, horrible place, right?
Yeah. But I thought
I wouldn't go on holiday there.
It was a good example of what life is like in the Imperium for, 99% of the populace, 99% of humans live like that. The eternal factory worker, or, agricultural worker, or scribe, or.
Yeah. Grim.
Grim dank. Right,
Grim
so
dank. That's the new term for it.
Where are we? I wish that was my term. Where are we going today? I think you've already said, haven't you?
We are heading
disorganized
into the warp.
Yay!
Harumble.
This episode, I thought we'd have a look at the big bad of the Imperium, which is the forces of chaos. Now, as Chris had asked at the start of the episode, which may have been cut, I don't know, was it always referred to as chaos? I think by and large, yes. It has gone under other names. Things like the Primordial Truth, the Eternal Enemy, the Primordial Evil, lots of things that mean kind of eternally bad. The kind of forces of chaos, or the influence of chaos, has existed as long as races have existed within the Warhammer 40k universe, although they really kind of kicked into gear with the rise of humanity. So the Chaos Gods, there are gods in the 40k universe. There are 4 Chaos Gods. Khorne, who's the god of murder, bloodshed, and war. Slaanesh, who is in the game used to be purely an expression of kind of sexual excess. Yeah, sexy time is now general excess and indulgence. So
but everyone still looks at kind of modern Slaanesh and is like, yeah, kinky stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
My name's Burke.
he likes to fuck and cook. I don't eat at his house anymore.
And read a book.
And read all at the same time. His cream-filled buns are just to die for.
Rose.
We then have Nurgle, who is the god of disease and decay and death, and then Tzeentch, who is the god of change and
the other one.
Magic and kind of psychic powers, that kind of thing. Machinations, which is definitely a word that's hard to say with loose dentures.
I feel sorry, just to interject on that point. Tzeentch, is this fair? Is he the least popular? Is he the least easy to define? Just by the fact that you took 3 times as long to kind of explain his title than the others. The others were pretty like Khorne, murder and blood and shit. Slaanesh, sexy time / just lots of good times. Nurgle,
like
death and decay and rebirth. Tzeentch, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of that. Maybe not.
It's like each god, like if they had a business card, it's like Khorne, murder, blood, death, and then and then it gets to Tzeentch, and it's like
it's just a QR code.
Yeah, have you ever looked into the sun when it's like just the 3 words, motherfucker. That's all you get.
I suppose in a way, yes. Tzeentch is the hardest to kind of pin down. Their influence is, as with the other gods, galactic wide, but they're not just the god of kind of psychic magic. They're also, in a very real way, the evil god of hope. And so, as we highlighted in the last episode, the kind of day-to-day lot of an imperial citizen is really quite shit. So there's a constant kind of oppression of human spirit and any chance at advancement. So, going back 10,000 years from when the emperor ascended, if at that time your family was a family of scribes, you would only ever be a family of scribes, as it was enforced by the Inquisition and by the Adeptus Terra, really at large. It became an article of faith then within the Imperial Truth that when the Emperor ascended, the Imperium was perfected. So there could be no advancement, there could be no change. When the Emperor left, he left the Imperium in good standing, and it was everyone who had a specific role, their family would fulfill that specific role, even if that was to end up as corpse starch biscuits in hives.
I was made for this role, baby.
I was made for this role.
My starch is real delicious.
Delicious. I mean, why do you keep calling me Kit Kat? If that is your kind of baseline humanity, a god that can offer you change, and that's not necessarily good change, is quite attractive. Because all the other gods offer a way out of your existence. Khorne, usually through you murdering your rivals and climbing up some sort of ladder once you've wiped out all other possibilities. Slaanesh, really, you kind of sleep your way to the top.
You fuck all of your enemies.
Yeah. to death, and then go up to death. Nurgle, you sneeze on all your enemies and they die, and then you go on up. And with Tzeentch, it's really more like you either get political power, aid from one of their various cults that they run, or you are given psychic capacities to be able to manipulate your surroundings and your, and the people in there, so you can gain power that way. So very much a power behind the throne is what Tzeentch is, and thus they deliberately make it hard for them to be defined. Mr. Chris, you had a question.
No, go on, Ben. Go on. Finish that thing off.
No, I was just going to say it's quite indirect, isn't it? Whereas the other ones are like it's blood, sex, or infection. The others is like it's quite it's kind of like you say, it's kind of behind the scenes. It's quite indirect.
Well, if you do it correctly, you can get all four of those in one encounter.
Now that is a night out.
Blood, sex, infection from behind the scenes. Yep.
I was just going to basically agree with Ben and just say, in a way, he's harder, or they are harder to define, yet they seem to have the most opportunity in terms of what they can do or what their followers can do. And in that way, I kind of like Tzeentch that way. I don't really know why, even though like he's kind of like I say, he's kind of loosely defined. I just think there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of what they can do and what they can achieve. Quite mysterious.
Yeah.
You said that he's kind of the god of hope, or like the manipulation of hope. I've also heard you describe him as the god of change. Is that?
Yes. The changer of ways is another.
Right. Because with all of the other three gods, I think we've spoke about this before, but like if they had, if they offered a boon or whatever to the potential follower, surely Tzeentch would benefit from that, because there would be some form of change.
Yes. You raise a great point, and Chris mentioned something kind of tangentially, which also needs to be defined. The Chaos Gods are defined in all the material as male, but they don't really have a gender.
Yeah.
So with the exception perhaps of Slaanesh, who is represented as or referred to most commonly as the Dark Prince, but appears as a kind of androgynous, sexless male in there. I think it's like between 16 and 19 years old. And I'm uncomfortable saying it.
Yeah.
Just that. It's like, no, thank you, Chaos God. That's more from an underage capacity, listeners, than anything else. But it's just.
But then, quite a few of their minions, their Chaos spawn, are feminine, aren't they? Like the demonettes.
Well, this is the point I'm going to touch on just now. We have largely discussed all of this already in our The Old World podcast, episode 2 specifically, in terms of the kind of nitty-gritty of gods and pantheons. So we won't be diving as deep as we did then, because we're going to look at the impact within the 40k universe. So that is to say that there is little to no difference between the Chaos Gods as they're represented in 40k as they are in what was Warhammer Fantasy, what will be soon the Old World. This was because
including the minions.
Including the minions, there are no demons that I'm aware of, demon models that I'm aware of, that are specific to the 40k universe. There was, for the briefest of times, a thing called a soul grinder, which is this large arachnid-style mechano demon, and that was a kind of possessed walking tank created by the Dark Mechanicum. That has since, I think from about 7th edition, which is the penultimate edition of Fantasy, folded into the Fantasy universe, you could actually get them in there as well. So if you have a Chaos Demon Force for 40k, if you rebase it, you can use it in Warhammer Fantasy. There's different rules, of course. There's no different models.
If you debase it.
Debase it. Or if you
Slaanesh it.
If I've seen people have got hold of these kind of little conversion kits that allows them to put like a round base and convert it into a square base without having to remove anything.
That's amazing.
So if you do that with now what will be the 4 game lines, if you have a Chaos Demon Force, you can play it in Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, the Horus Heresy, which is distinct from the 40k game, and what will be the Old World. So
That
it's the
sounds
most.
You get
it's the bang for the buck force. Yeah,
exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Kral, pop quiz. What era was the Horus Heresy? Which K?
30.
He's
just on fire, isn't he? He's just on fire.
I mean, we're looking at we're going through this now Inquisitorial nonsense. I think Grand Inquisitor Randall McDangle may have.
I am the Grand Inquisitor. Everybody feel my wrath, apart from you, Randall.
Oh dear! I find it really difficult when we're talking about chaos minions not to think of chaos like tiny little yellow dudes.
Banana.
So let's deal with a kind of summary of what we've already covered within the content for 40k so far. As we've mentioned, there are 2.5 realities within the 40k universe. There is the real corporeal universe, the physical manifestation of reality. There is the warp, also known as the realm of chaos from the kind of fantasy side of things. Also called the Sea of Souls, because it is where the kind of souls come from within the 40k universe. So when a person is born, a little piece of the Sea of Souls, also known as the Immaterium, is drawn into that physical body, and that's where your individuality starts rather than is defined completely. It is a pure sea of emotion. That's really what it is.
I'm in a glass cage of emotion.
How do you define a sea of emotion? Like, is it just every emotion? Happy, sad, angry, fear, all of that?
Think of it as like an emotional...
How do you perceive that?
Okay.
Like, you could kind of argue we're in a sea of emotion now. I'm just going to be quiet. Go on, let you answer the question. Go.
If you think of the whole of existence is Bovril. And so liquid...
I often do.
Made up of various things, most of which seems to come from bovines. But it's... everything is in there. Happiness, joy, love. But by far, those are eclipsed by, anger, fear, lust, and a drive to change. So that's really the kind of 4 big ones, and everything ties back to those pieces of emotion that kind of confusingly also manifest as like particles. Although not really. So it's much like light. You know how light can be both a wave and a particle at the same time. Yeah. That's exactly the thing to think about when you're thinking about what the Sea of Souls would be. So an individual would be a collection of various types of kind of emotional waves, substance.
I'm mainly made of frustration. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Kral, that's what people are around you.
That's what I radiate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I'm
I
made
would
of
say
ignorance,
that
radiating frustration. Yeah.
I would say that the example that came to mind of a sea of emotion is any time spent around you. It's just a roller coaster. Like, sometimes I don't know whether I'm coming or going. Overall, it's I mean, that's probably where it differs. Overall, it's a generally positive experience, but there's peaks and troughs, bro.
But around him, and thus within the realm of chaos, there is raw creativity. I mean,
Yes,
Chris and I came at your birthday party, came up with a kind of semi-detective lawyer TV show, headed up.
I don't remember this. There was a lot of cider.
Kral, you were about 3 or 4 beers down by that point. So.
You don't remember Paisley Scrotum, fashion lawyer?
Oh, yeah. Fashion lawyer.
Jesus Christ.
Where did that even come from?
I don't know.
Probably the 4th or 5th cider. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
that was a fun day.
Can you remember? Can you remember what his private eye, his attached private eye, was called?
No, Gooch something.
It was Gooch Johnson.
Gooch Johnson.
Gooch Johnson, PI. Anyway, yeah, I had a staggering amount of drink that wasn't Bailey's. It was ridiculous. Anyway, yes, sorry. Anyway. So, as an individual, if you are killed, your soul dips into the warp, where it will slowly dissipate, and the bits of you that were angry, that kind of emotional, angry mentality, will be drawn towards other elements from other beings that are also angry. The same is true of lust, the same is true of fear, and again of hope. So it's a kind of hellish purgatory until you dissipate. Now, these forces, anger, lust, death, and hope, they eventually coalesced and gained sentience. Jeez, Chris is yawning already. And gained sentience, which is a word that has taken 3 years for me to properly pronounce.
Sentences.
So anger manifested, and gained. No, I'm dying on that hill. I'm dying on that behemothic hill.
It's behemoth.
So anger manifested and became Khorne. The identity of Khorne was born from billions of elements of anger joining together.
Surely that, I mean, it's amazing that it didn't happen with some of the others as well. Can you imagine, like, the god of frustration? Just looks like Kral.
I feel we're picking on Kral for no reason today.
I love it.
It's because he's yawning. We're trying to wake him up.
I care not where the attention comes from, as long as the attention comes.
You know? So you saying that, like, that probably did have, like, the frustration particles, you know. So I die, right? My soul drifts off into the warp. It starts to dissipate like butter melting in a pan, and as I do, all of my frustration particles, they go off to hang out with all of the other people who died's frustration particles. But what you're saying is that it didn't reach a critical mass.
Exactly right, yeah.
So it still has the potential to do it. Like if Kral got out there and really worked hard, he could frustrate enough people that when they died, their particles might tip over the edge, and we would end up with X named God. We need to come up with a name for the frustration God.
It would just be Kral spelt with a K. That would and an apostrophe.
Yeah.
Kral.
Wouldn't all the frustration particles actually just be absorbed into me? I'd maintain my form, I think, when I would go in there.
Or you would be reformed.
Why am I not
exactly
melting like butter in a pan? Like suddenly,
you're just floating in purgatory, and all of these frustration particles turn up, and they're like, "Hello, Dad."
And I'm like, "Come into me, my children."
Wow,
in a non-weird way.
Yeah, you said to all of your sons and daughter particles.
I've just got a vision of you now lying in the Sea of Souls, but it's like the Dead Sea, so you're just floating on the surface going, why am I not sinking? This is so frustrating. Yeah.
Why is everyone else melting?
Okay, let's think of some other emotions. What other chaos gods could there be? There's obviously the frustration god. We'll call it Kral.
God of indecisiveness? Ben?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's about it. I think we've run out of emotions. Okay, let's go. Carry on with the show.
But like what about like positive ones as well? Like amusement.
They exist there too. But they are overshadowed. They are overshadowed by kind of the big four.
The god of anxiety would be great, wouldn't it? Just doesn't leave the warp. It's just too much.
Just pacing back and forth, smoking cigarettes. Just
yeah.
It's not a threat. He's just like, stuck in his own head. Were there any gods? Are there any other gods that exist but are just kind of insignificant compared to the big four? Were there any gods that existed and went away? Was there a god of frustration? Is there a god of frustration?
Well, technically, all forms of gods exist in some level within the warp. Now, while the warp is just kind of a sea of emotion, there are sort of existential locations within there. So Khorne has his own realm. He has his own area of the warp, but it's not like a three-dimensional area as we would understand it. The same for the other four, but the Elder Gods have a place there, or had a place there. Gork and Mork, the Orc gods, have some influence in the warp, and so on and so on. So it's kind of a heavenly hell for most other races, but it's definitely viewed as hell for most of humanity.
I think there's definitely scope for like a sitcom for like the gods of anxiety, awkwardness, and confusion.
That's just Seinfeld. You're talking about Seinfeld. So, of the big four, 3 of the gods were manifested directly by events caused by humanity. These were the ones that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were, and a being came into sentience. So that's Khorne, Nurgle, and Tzeentch. Khorne came about or gained sentience roughly in the kind of mid-1200s with the Mongol invasions of what is now Asia or Eurasia.
Eurasia.
So much blood was spilled, racist, that that the god of murder, violence, and death was born, in quotes.
Pop.
So within 100 years, we then had Nurgle, who was brought around, or who gained sentience from the Black Death, the Black Plague, in around 1350-ish, our own calendar. Tzeentch then came about mid-1500s because of the Renaissance, because of this big birth of learning and hope within, obviously, Europe, but the influence then off into the wider world, with hindsight, quite negatively. Slaanesh, on the other hand, was a direct result of the collapse of a race. This was the Eldar. Now, we've talked about the ages of the Imperium, if you recall, Age of Technology, Age of Darkness, and so on. Build up towards Slaanesh's birth, towards he gaining sentience, is effectively mirrors the Age of Strife. So it's when, if you recall, there was suddenly a lot of warp storms within the galaxy that cut off human-occupied planets from each other. So we went from this star-spanning galactic empire, pre the Emperor himself, to individual systems, maybe small little kind of pseudo-empires of 2 or more systems, and Terra being completely cut off.
When you say, sorry to interrupt, when you say pre-Emperor, do you mean pre the Emperor becoming the Emperor? Because he was alive at that point, is that right?
Yes, pre the emperor becoming the emperor. Yeah,
Right. Okay.
So the warp storms that cut Terra off and corrupted or disrupted the rest of the human empire was the sexual funk of Slaanesh or of the Eldar fucking themselves to death. So, it wasn't just lust at that stage. It was everything. Every single... Wait, hang on a second now. Do you remember a movie called Event Horizon?
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember there's a scene in that where they view a video clip message from there
Yes.
in what can only be described as an orgy of death?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty funky.
That for thousands of years. You imagine.
Okay.
So there was nothing was off the table. I'll use the phrase here, no holds barred.
Wow.
And we'll leave it at that. And that came to, if you'll forgive the phrase, head at the 30,000 K. No, not 30,000. I'm doing the millions, billions thing again. 30,000 K. 30,000. What? Yeah, in the 30th millennium, where it reached, to use your phrase, Ben, a critical mass, and the entire multiple systems of the Eldar's home, their place in the galaxy, was drawn into the warp. And with the exception of maybe about 1 or 2% of the population, all Eldar died and their souls kind of got sucked together, and Slaanesh was manifested. So it was in the death throes of a race that Slaanesh came about. And with that birth, I'll pause for questions, but with that birth, all of the warp storms went away. Like someone went through it with an aerosol and just cleared up all the sex smell. Not that I have any experience.
Stank.
The stank.
The funk stank.
And thus that event allowed the emperor to come to full kind of power, in quotes, and launch the Great Crusades. And
Question?
thus the reclamation of the universe. Mr. Chris.
Wow.
Why did the Eldar start doing that in the first place? What compelled them to get all hedonistic and weird?
Well, nothing was off the table to them for millions of years. They were effectively the rulers of the galaxy.
Right.
Maybe not. Rulers is perhaps the wrong word.
They were the apex, though. Nothing could untouchable.
Strong. Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. So they just
got bored. Is that what happened? They became.
They
There's
just
no challenge left.
Yeah, they descended into decadence, and so. Various Eldar leaders could see what was happening. The ones that would, travel to the homeworlds and then go away for 100 years to explore the galaxy and then come back, and they could see the degradation. But those there could not see it. So very much like putting a frog in a pot and raising the temperature rather than dropping it into boiling water. Mr. Chris,
it's an interesting topic, isn't it? What would you do if you had all the power and authority and no consequence of what you did? I think Alan Watts kind of posed it as like, okay, let's say you could dream any dream you like for as long as you'd like. What would you do? You'd have all the affairs you could do. You could engage in all the activities you wanted to do, illicit or otherwise. But how long would that go on for? And then you probably get bored of that, and then you do other things and other things. And what would you do?
Is the one is too many and 1,000 never enough sort of jam once you get to that mindset.
It's if you look, we will cover them when we talk about the Eldari, which is the difference between Craftworld Eldari and the Dark Eldari, the Drukhari, as they became known. So the Craft Worlds, they recognized the danger of constant hedonism and of a buffet of every single experience possible. So they came up with what's referred to as the paths. So they have, like, how would you describe it? In the kind of East Asian philosophies of, there's a strict path that you have to follow to master this or that. So you've got various paths for warriors, paths for seers, paths for artisans, all this kind of stuff. And so a craft world Eldari will only walk one path until they have absolutely mastered every aspect of it, and then they'll choose a second path. And then once they've done that, a third path. So it instills discipline more than anything else. And that's really what we're talking about. If there's no discipline and everything's permitted, you can lose yourself to everything. The Drukhari, on the other hand, they resemble most closely the Eldar, the pre-fall Eldar, in their lifestyles. So it's constant hedonism and indulgence, yeah.
But it's not just hedonism and indulgence, is it? I mean, they're like fucking and killing, and most of the time at the same time, by the sounds of it. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's once you get to my age, you really come to understand that there's only so many different ways you can have an orgasm. So you may as well start killing stuff. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry.
The lines of blood.
The lines of blood.
Yeah, I think the answer to your question, Kral, is like, once you've reached that level, you fuck dead people. Apparently, that's just the thing. So if you do reach that level, you know what to do.
Whoa. That no one was talking about that then. That's the thing you introduced just now.
I mean, you described it as a killing orgy. I mean,
yes. But in terms of more like
of death.
Yeah, more like the sensation that you would feel from being involved in that.
You're telling me nobody got their dick out in that process? I don't.
Oh no!
For a second,
everyone got their dick out.
Especially
everyone.
You're not allowed in unless you got your dick out.
Yeah. They have very specific types of locks that can only be opened with
very strict bouncers, ID and your penis.
So the birth of Slaanesh is the most recent of the births of the Chaos Gods, and the only one so far that has not been the result of effectively the human race. Mr. Ben.
You mentioned in a previous episode that at some point the Emperor went off and had a conversation with the gods, the Chaos Gods,
yes,
and duped them.
Yes.
Was that before this point? And if that is the case, no. Okay, right. No. So when he did do that, he was talking to.
It was all four. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the home systems of the Eldar, as I say, were drawn into the warp. And more correctly, perhaps it is that the warp and reality occupied the same space during that time. And all of the Eldar planets became what's known as demon worlds. So these are worlds where the warp kind of rules all, and anything that you can imagine can happen. And in some cases, you simply imagining something makes it appear before you on certain planets. These planets house the ruins of an entire, couple of million-year-old civilizations, perhaps even longer than that. There's records of them being involved in the kind of great war between the old ones and their enemies, the Necrons. So they ruled, the Eldar effectively held sway over the galaxy for about 50 to 60 million years. So just to touch back on the points we were making, if you are a being that's able to live for many thousands of years, there is at least one Eldari character who was present at the Horus Heresy who still leads a craft world to this day. How fast will you get bored of hot chocolate? Or.
Let's not talk crazy. Never.
No, I'm trying to steer this back towards wholesome examples, which is a first for me, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
So that
So he doesn't drink hot chocolate then? Is that what we're saying? He's just, I don't know what.
With whipped cream, and then add the marshmallows.
His
sprinkles.
It's mainly marshmallows now. That's it. He's got to the point where hot chocolate's just.
He's got a great technique. Don't drink it all. Let the marshmallows do their work. Just trust me. Trust me.
All joking aside, but he was actually the founding member of the Path of the Barista in the Eldar craft worlds. Literal Starbucks.
I invented the word.
Excellent.
Grande.
Well done. Very, very good.
So within these ruins of the Eldari civilization are, vaults full of technologies that may or may not now have been corrupted. Effectively, the skeletal remains of billions upon billions of beings, but also various manifestations of the warp through which demons can get in, through which the gods can influence not only that region of space, which is now known as the Eye of Terror.
The Eye of Trevor.
The Eye of Trevor, exactly right. But also the Chaos Legions, the losers of the Horus Heresy and their demonic leaders, call that home. That's where they live. I was going to say safely, but, in quotes. Mr. Ben.
One last question on the Slaanesh Eldar Gate. Does Slaanesh have any aspects of its personality or its persona that are Eldari in nature? Because they was literally made of Eldari souls. Like, I know you said before, like the gods don't really present as themselves, do they? It's all, they don't really come into the corporeal space as themselves. It's always through their minions. Banana. But yeah. But is there any aspect of it that is Eldari?
I think in terms of it presents as this kind of clean-limbed, late teenage, androgynous being, yes, because the Eldari are, for all intents and purposes, androgynous. That's how they're portrayed in all of the artwork. They do have similar body shapes in terms of the distinction they make between male and female Eldari, but the male Eldari are as beautiful as the female Eldari, and thus Slaanesh is more beautiful still in terms of their portrayal. But it's a good point, well made, insofar as Slaanesh constantly tries to devour the rest of the Eldari that were missed. It's their favorite snack. A real kind of god boner.
It's got a real penchant for Eldar for Tartar.
What?
I don't know. Some sort of Eldar food.
While it's not the only kind of area of space that has merged reality with the warp, it is, until recently, the largest. We're now thinking about the Great Rift, which has cleft the galaxy in twain, which is effectively, they've smeared the Eye of Trevor all the way across the galaxy from top left to bottom right, as you would see it in maps. So that's known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, or, depending on how you pronounce it, Cicatrix Maledictum, or Cicatrix Maledictum.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what it's called. You're not just pulling our legs.
Why?
Cicatrix. Because it's just a silly name.
It's Latin. It's Latin, Chris, you bigot.
What does it mean?
I have no idea. I call it the Great Rift because it's referred to as the Great Rift.
Because it's easier to say than whatever the other word that is.
Cicatrix Maledictum roughly translates as...
Cicatrix?
The bad Cicatrix.
It sounds like kind of like one of the moves they developed at the end of the Fall of the Eldar, just before Slaanesh was born. What was it again? Slicky, tricky.
Yeah.
No,
step one, lube up.
I might be mispronouncing it. It's not sticky dick malatrictum. All right, it's not a sex move
or a dessert.
It's basically 4 Eldari holding another Eldari spread-eagled out of any gender, and the perpetrator in question dives WWE style off of a tower of other couples and then lands penis or vagina. Who knows what the Elder have? Could be space penis or space vagina first.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Spagina.
Yeah.
What is the Great Rift? What shape is it? Is there a shape to it?
It looks like
it's a rift shape.
Yeah, it is. It's a rift shape. It looks like a spray of thick fluid across the galaxy. It looks very much like a painter's radio.
An intergalactic spaff.
Yeah.
A painter's radio. Wow.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Oh, Christ.
Right.
So that must make the Eye of Trevor the clit.
Grow the
Moving
fuck
on.
up, everybody. Just grow up now. Okay.
Just saying. Just saying.
Are you suggesting that that area should be renamed the Clitotrix Maledictum?
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Okay, all right.
It would make it really difficult to find. Yep.
My word.
Some people don't even believe it exists.
Yeah.
If you're a force of chaos struggling against the Big Four to establish your own domain within the Immaterium, then you should try Sea of Souls Timeshare. SOS Timeshare gives you the opportunity to rule your own slice of the warp with just one annual payment. You'll share a substantially sized realm, allowing you to reign supreme once a year, every year, for eternity. When you own a timeshare, you can choose to rule the same realm with your minions each year, or swap it through any of our associate companies for a similar sized kingdom, meaning you can command a different part of the ether every year. All paid for in advance in your Sea of Souls timeshare holding. So for the price of a reasonable management fee, which covers the running costs of your dominion, you can enjoy hassle-free, undisputed domination once a year until the end of time. Like to know more? Then call Sea of Souls Timeshare on 5329400686 or log on to sostimeshare.chaos. Timeshare. It's better than not ruling at all, right?
The kind of second largest warp breach, if you'll excuse the phrase, after the smeared Eye of Trevor is, or second most famous, not second largest, second most famous, is the Maelstrom, which is where the Badab War occurred. The grognards who listen to this, hello, I am one of you, will be very excited when we do that, because we're going to do a whole kind of series on the Badab War when we get to it in 2037. Yeah, so the galaxy is now dotted with various warp storms and breaches between the realm of chaos and the corporeal universe. So we have briefly but comprehensively looked at the warp, what's in the warp, and the impact of degradation and excess on a race's entire being. In terms of what else is in the warp, let's deal with the kind of big four. We've talked about them already. Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh. 4 chaos gods. There are ostensibly other Chaos Gods, as we have discussed in the Old World podcast, episode 2. And within, if you'll recall, who was the god of malice and revenge? Can you remember from the fantasy one?
Cain?
No, his cousin was called Malol, the god of laughter.
Malal.
Oh,
Malal, yes. That being exists within the 40k universe and is referred to only as Malice, but forms the same exact function as it did in the fantasy universe. And as we've said earlier, there's not really anything to do with the demonic aspects of chaos that doesn't also exist in Warhammer, the Old World, Warhammer Fantasy as was, or indeed in Age of Sigmar. You can use all those models between them, and a lot of the lore is the same.
But
can anyone...
The Horned Rat?
Horned Rat might exist. But doesn't officially exist. Horned Rat, for our 40k only listeners, is the god of the Skaven, who is kind of god of ruin and plagues, the kind of destruction of civilized life, in quotes.
Wow.
There is one other named demon who exists in the 40k universe, who originated within a specific game. If anyone, would you want to take a stab? A specific game set in the fantasy setting? I guess, lads. No, it doesn't appear. No, it doesn't appear.
Oh,
okay.
A tabletop game. They spent some time hiding in a warpstone meteorite.
It's more
yes.
time.
Be'lakor.
Be'lakor also exists within the 40k universe, and indeed has largely the same type of life. They were the very first demon prince of chaos, believed to have been human.
The next demon prince or something.
They have to support the kind of ever champion of chaos, this time on a galactic level, and they perform the same kind of trickery that the Emperor kind of performed. They got the best deal they could, the support from all 4 Chaos Gods to go forward and then kind of conquer the universe in their name.
Chaos Gods are schmucks, really, aren't they? You can fool all 4 of them.
Yeah. play them off against each other. Yeah,
exactly.
So each Chaos God, as I've hinted at, has their own kind of non-geographical region within the warp. They are able to manifest that in terms of a kind of physical representation of some aspect of their power or their culture. Each Chaos God has a pantheon of demons, which we have discussed at length on the Fantasy podcast. But just to reiterate, in general, they have greater demons, who are the kind of generals of their forces. Underneath them and to one side are the demon princes. These are champions, mortal champions, who have achieved so much for the cause of that god that they are given effectively eternal existence as a kind of demonic commander of their forces. Demon
are still mortals.
They started out as mortals and then ascended to demonhood.
Gotcha. Right.
Some ascended directly to demon prince. Others went via being a lesser demon, which is the third category down.
Like a demon
lesser
janitor.
demons are the foot troops and janitors of the forces of chaos. These arrive in, I'm desperately trying not to use the word come. These arrive in the format, no, nothing?
No, yeah. No,
the whole
I was
Painter's Radio thing? All right, yeah, fine. So the lesser demons really are the foot troops, and they appear both as kind of infantry, but some of them also arrive on mounts. And each demonic pantheon... Pardon me?
Nothing. Sorry, that was a tenuous link to Juggerbuff. Just like juggernauts.
Yes.
Brass dogs, blah, 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 blah.
The
Buff
demonic
right out.
steeds of Khorne are called the Juggernauts of Khorne, and these are rhino dogs. It's really mechanical rhino dogs. There's no other way to describe them. And they arrive usually with a small can of a very effective and trademarked buffing agent to make sure that their bronze is constantly clean, referred to as Juggerbuff.
Juggerbuff. Not to be mixed up with the off-brand OEM Bugger Juff, which is used for a very different thing.
Yeah, it's
By
very
the
different.
Slaanesh
That was created during the fall of the Elder.
Yeah. Do not buff your Juggernaut with Bugger Juff. The results can be fatal.
You can be completely juffed. Wait. Also, for anyone listening, you can buy Juggerbuff t-shirts on our store, layingdowndelore.com. And moving on, I'm catching on. It's taken me 3 years, but I'm getting there.
He's following in Fat Kral's footsteps.
His little tiny footsteps. What was I saying? So they've got the generals who are the greater demons. You've got demon princes who are kind of commanders and agents at large. Lesser demons who arrive either on foot or are mounted on the mounts of the Chaos Gods. The steeds take various shapes, from the rhino dogs of Khorne to the elusive two-legged tit snakes of Slaanesh. That's not a euphemism. That's exactly what the models look like. You have the palanquins of Nurgle, so you've got a seat carried by hordes of tiny little spaffy Nurglings. And then for Tzeentch, you have what's referred to as the discs of Tzeentch, or the sky sharks. And these are floating platforms that the demons and champions stand on. The final category of demon for each god are the beasts of chaos. And these are used as effectively hunting beasts. They hunt down either wayward souls within the warp, or when there is a breach, they manage to manifest into corporeal reality and hunt down the enemies of chaos in their own existing plane. There are untold millions, if not billions, possibly even trillions, because apparently I don't know how to count, of various forces of the armies of each of the, or within the armies of each of the Chaos Gods.
There are as many as there are Ultramarines, right?
There are more demons than there are Ultramarines, even at my worst type of numerical dyslexia.
Okay, what about Space Marines as a whole?
There are only 1 million Space Marines in totality within the galaxy. There are 1,000 chapters of 1,000. Add on to that the Grey Knights, but you're still vastly, vastly outnumbered. Each demon of whatever rank is empowered, or indeed almost all of them are in fact formed by the Chaos God separating a tiny part of themselves. Each demon is effectively the Chaos God in miniature. So
in a thimbleful. Yep.
A thimbleful, chaos thimble. And that then allows the Chaos God to influence not only the totality of their own kind of realm within the warp, but also the corporeal world. Now, Darren, how do demons get into the kind of corporeal world? Great question, Darren. I'm glad you're here.
We don't even need to be here, Graham.
I'm not here in spirit. That's for sure.
That's great. That's really motivating, Kral. Thanks. Chaos forces, the demonic, we'll call them, tend to be able to get into the corporeal universe via a handful of different ways. The easiest way for them to get in is through a breach in between the warp and the galaxy. We'll just, in terms of moving forward in the conversation, when I say galaxy, I mean the corporeal, non-warpy universe. Mr. Chris.
Such as when Eric the Red sent a psychic spear to the Emperor to warn him of Horus's betrayal, but then unleashed the chaos. Was it Eric the Red?
No, but it's fine. Keep going.
But we're going to call him that. We're going to call him that.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Sent a psychic message to the Emperor, which weakened, shattered, made a weak point in the galaxy, in the corporeal world, in the throne room, no less, wasn't it?
But I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you that because...
No, take the piss. I called him wrong. It was Eric the Red or something.
No, isn't it? In terms of the situation that you're describing, you're 85% correct. We've referred to like 2.5 realities. The half of a reality is referred to as the webway, and that is a series of tunnels, much like the internet, I'm given to understand, that goes through the warp. It allows safe corporeal travel from one area to another through these kind of warp-based wormholes. Not wormholes, that's something else. The breach you're referring to was a demonic invasion of an area of the webway where there was and the doorway, the access point to that is within the throne room of the Emperor's palace. And so when Eric the Red, I'm never using his proper name again. When Eric the Red,
you kill him.
No,
Magnus.
it doesn't matter.
Magnus.
No, don't tell him. No, forget that. It's Eric.
So when E-Dog threw the message spear,
E-Money.
When E-Money, I love it. Okay, I'm going to take it to his logical description. When Bitcoin threw the psychic spear at the Emperor, the psychic warning, it distracted the Emperor's kind of capacity to create a psychic bulkhead on that entrance to the webway, and thus the demons were able to not necessarily get in, but cause a lot more hassle than he had hoped for.
But in the webway, not the corporeal world.
At that stage and at that time, yes. However, if the Emperor wasn't there, and it was just a kind of manifest psychic barrier that was disrupted, the demons would just pour in. And they'd be able to pour in for as long as their individual power allowed them to stay within the corporeal universe, because it bleeds away their psychic manifestation over time, unless it's boosted by various other things and demonic devices. So
do they have like X amount of, kind of warp energy?
HP.
At the point at which they come into corporeal space, and then from that point it starts to bleed away. They have to go and then dive into corporeal. It's like taking a breath before you dive underwater.
Yeah. The short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is that's a stupid analogy. It's more like no.
The longer answer,
but it's like
no.
The higher up the food chain you go in terms of the forces of the Chaos God, the longer that not only that individual demon can last within the corporeal universe, but they have like an aura of influence. So the most powerful greater demons, effectively, they're like a walking warp breach, which allows lesser demons to be able to kind of replenish their demonic energy.
To top up.
To top up, exactly right. Really, demons are like pay-as-you-go phones. That's really what we're learning here. So the warp breaches are the main and most common way that demons get in. There are then artifacts and rituals. So there are ancient artifacts that, if held or twisted or used in a certain way, a demon can either be released from that artifact, a demon held captive within that thing, or it opens up a very localized chaos rift that allows a single demon or a small force of demons in. Exactly right. Exactly. Concurrent with that are the warp breaches created when a psyker misuses the power of the warp. We've dealt with psykers before, but really what happens when a psyker goes wrong is that a chaos portal will open up within them, and they'll flay open like a kind of red flower, and demons then can pour out. And so it's like a kind of really evil window into the warp, insofar as the warp pours in to the corporeal universe, but you can also travel into the warp directly by passing
diving
through
into
such
a
a portal. Exactly right, yeah.
Gross.
But you have to hold your breath before you do it.
Yeah, you have to hold your breath and wear brown trousers.
Does that is that psyker done at that point? They're kaput.
Oh yeah,
dead.
they're dead.
They're
They're effectively dead. One of the novels, I think it's the one that dealt with the Indomitus Crusade for when the Primaris Space Marines came about. They describe a disease that Nurgle had released, and an infected foot soldier, just a regular foot soldier, it seemed. It's certainly not a psyker. The disease manifested a chaos portal within them, and their body mutated into a kind of gateway, a physical gateway within which there was a chaos portal at the center, and that's where the demons were able to get in and cause the most havoc. So it's not only psykers, there are other ways that chaos portals can be opened.
So be careful, kids.
Yeah,
Could get you anytime. That goes for you too, Crow.
Man.
The big difficulty then for the Imperium when it comes to chaos is getting a grip on the chaos cults and the followers of chaos within the boundaries of the Imperium. Largely, this is the job of not only the kind of the military forces in general, but the kind of dedicated job of each planetary governor. You'll recall that they have to maintain the Emperor's peace on their planet and provide tithes in terms of material troops and indeed psykers. If you'll recall, the psykers are harvested up, they're captured, rounded up, usually by the Arbites or the Arbites, and handed over to the Sisters of Silence who run the black ships that take the good time psychic snacks direct to the Emperor.
on the black ship lollipop.
Yeah, this is done also to reduce the given number of psykers on any planet at any time to the barest minimums, and thus curtailing the possibilities that chaos portals open and these demons breach through. The other force that hunts demons relentlessly, and also the cultists that kind of help them manifest, is the Great Inquisition, the Inquisition of Man, which we've dealt with before. Principally, we're looking at the Ordo Hereticus, which deals with the kind of chaos worshipping and anti-imperium kind of anti-imperium driven cults. The other section of the Inquisition that hunts down demons, specifically designed to hunt down demons, is the Ordo Malis, or Ordo Malis, depending on how you choose to pronounce it. And these are the demon hunters of the Inquisition. And they specifically are charged with hunting down manifested demons within the Imperium and those that brought about that manifestation or who defend that demon or hide them in terms of from imperial justice. And these demon hunters have access, they can commandeer any imperial force without notice, and can indeed perform a rite we've discussed before, I think, the Exterminatus. Have we discussed that?
Yeah.
Where
wipe out a whole planet, right?
A single official of the Imperium can sign the death warrant of billions of people, which can then be enacted with the Life Eater virus, as was used in at the start of the Horus heresy, where it converts all organic matter to gas, which usually then explodes.
Yikes.
Certainly, that's been my experience of it.
Keep all naked flames away.
So in terms of a demon that has manifested, I thought it might be useful to look at what they do. What they do is very much dependent on two things: which god they belong to, and also the purpose of the ritual that brought them into the corporeal universe. Demons that are bound within an item or artifact, in general, simply look to be free. So anyone who uses let's say a demonic weapon, for instance, an axe or sword that's possessed by a demon, is as much a slave to that demon as the demon is trapped within that artifact. There are various powers that can be associated with such artifacts, but these weapons have a mind of their own, quite literally. And so if they feel that they're not being used or respected, they can leap up and kill their wielder. So they can kind of take control of either the wielder's body, or can fly effectively from whatever surface they're on and embed themselves in the side of the
That's pretty
bearer's
funny.
head. Yeah.
Wow. You're in the midst of a battle trying to fucking pummel someone's skull and you just get the sass from this like mallet. You're doing it wrong. Shut the fuck up.
But within each item then, that how it's used, what it wants, not necessarily just to be free, but an axe of Khorne simply wants to be used as an axe and to kill bigger and more threatening beings and entities and foes. An item of Nurgle will be used, a demonic item of Nurgle will be used to spread a disease of Nurgle, and so to pave the way for the creation of a larger portal in many cases, especially with Nurgle. Interestingly, he holds as a prisoner one of the last Eldari gods, the mother god, the god of rejuvenation and fertility, Aisha, the kind of mother god. So when the Eldari Empire collapsed, Slaanesh captured Aisha, but didn't devour her, and no one knows why. And then ultimately, as part of a trade or some debt that was owed, Aisha ended up in a rusty cage in the kind of kitchen of Nurgle, for want of a better word. So what he'll do is he creates all these new viruses constantly, and he makes her drink a draft of each one, so that and he watches to see how virulent, how aggressive the disease is, and if he's pleased with it, he'll tip the cauldron over into a grate, and that grate, the liquid appears as rain within the corporeal universe on usually one or more planets, and thus a new disease enters reality.
That's mental.
Yeah,
does she just survive all of these encounters?
Because of her natural kind of powers of rejuvenation, she heals usually quite slowly, but she does heal, and thus is able to be the lab rat for his next next disease.
Grim.
If it doesn't work, if she's able to withstand it, he gives a kind of little huff of disappointment, drinks the entire cauldron so that he absorbs all the energy back into himself, and then pukes up into the cauldron and starts again. So she's eternally drinking Nurgle's spew.
Yeah. Don't order from that kitchen.
He's nothing if not disgusting. But he's quite jolly.
He's not wasteful, though. He's not wasteful. I admire that.
What a thing to admire. He's the cheerful Mr. Creosote of the 40k universe. But there are other all of the gods have their own kind of throne rooms. Khorne's throne room within the warp is just, there is the throne of hundreds of thousands of skulls from all different types of races, everything from humans to Tyranids.
I'll be so unimpressed. I'll be in there. I'll be like, behold, my throne of skulls. Yawn. Saw that coming.
Like Alexander McQueen has designed this throne for me, especially.
Get something original, Khorne.
Tzeentch has his...
It would have been far better if his throne was just made of blood. I'm like, okay, now we're thinking. That's real out of the box thinking. How does that even work?
You see, any kind of structure that has to be more than a puddle, you're going to really struggle with blood. That reminds me of the episode of Black Books where Bernard demands that the other guy makes a tower of soup.
Or it could be like a jacuzzi, Khorne's jacuzzi of blood, and he'd just be like sat there like really seedly,
floating on top.
Come and join me in my jacuzzi of blood. Is like, no, mate.
You go, is that you, Slaanesh? Masquerading as Khorne in a blood jacuzzi. Tzeentch has his impossible fortress within the heart of a crystal maze. Or Crystal Labyrinth. Crystal Maze is something else. That's a game show in the UK.
What a show.
Richard Bryan, was that him?
That's the one, yeah.
And then...
Don't know why I remember that name.
Slaanesh has his kind of dark palace at the center of kind of 6 rings of...
pleasure.
Pleasure. Yes, exactly right. Pleasure. And so one assumes it's all like cock-shaped towers, and I don't know why I went there so quickly, I'll be honest with you. It's a very... listeners, it's been a very confusing Saturday morning for me.
I thought you were going to go kind of the more family-friendly Slaanesh. Like, one of the towers is like tickling. The second tower is like too many Maltesers. But no, you just went straight for the dicks. Just straight.
Yeah, and even while you were talking, you went the Tower of Tickling. With dicks.
The dick ticklers.
Mr. Chris.
Slaanesh, excess and stuff. Does wealth ever come into that?
Yeah,
or is it
greed.
More kind of greed, like financial, like money.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Wealth and things like that. Oh, okay,
money.
It's not just visceral pleasures. It's
materialistic
anything
stuff
as well.
Yeah, anything you derive
whatever
satisfaction or enjoyment from, but it's tainted by the fact that whatever level you enjoy, however much pleasure you get from it, you will never get that amount of pleasure from it again. You have to ramp it up to get the same amount of pleasure. So it's much like, you gain a tolerance for pleasure, or for enjoyment, or for excess, or. Thus, that's why most Slaaneshi worshippers are in fact some form of addict. They can't give it up.
Yeah.
They have to keep going to get that same kind of hit of dicks.
Okay, sure.
Sorry, everyone.
The tickle pillar, the Malteser pillar, and then just 4 dick pillars. But I don't know why they
Behold,
we're not too
my dicks.
We don't really like the first 2 pillars. We're thinking about replacing them with dicks too.
So I thought I might just be able to close out this rather slapshod episode, because we can't go back to talking about 6-titted lobster women, because we've already done that. Those are the demonettes of Slaanesh. Yeah. So if you want a breakdown of the specific demonic types, episode 2 of Laying Down the Lore of the Old World is your best bet. We will, of course, when we come to deal with the forces of chaos demons in detail, really do a deep dive into each of the gods, the types of demons, the names of their demons, the confusing use of numbers. Each god has a chaotic number. Slaanesh's is 6, Nurgle's is 7, Khorne's is 8, and Tzeentch is 9. No one really knows why, specifically in terms of why they were given numbers in the first place. Way back in first edition of 40k, it's confusing. But
they were subbed on kind of halfway through the Blood Bowl game, and they just had a random bunch of shirts. They were like, right, you're 6, you're 7, you're 8. Oh, it means something. We'll figure out later on.
Yeah, we'll figure out.
And they
later
are your
on.
chaos numbers. What's a chaos number? They are. It just is what it is. All right.
But in first edition 40k, if you had a force of Nurgle, in general, you could buy units in numbers of 7. And you could only buy units in numbers of 7 and 6 for Slaanesh and so on. But I thought we might round out this episode just with acknowledging the other half of the forces of chaos, which are the Chaos Space Marines, either the Chaos Legions, which were the original 9 legions of the Horus Heresy, or the bad side in the Horus Heresy. As I mentioned, the Chaos Legions, Chaos Space Marine Legions, and the Space Marine Renegades, which are chapters or companies that have gone from being loyalist Space Marines through to full-blown Chaos Space Marines. They largely exist within the Eye of Terror and raid out from there under the instruction of their demonic Primarchs. So we're now looking at a situation where 6 of the 9 Primarchs of the Space Marine Legions ascended to Demon Princehood. So they're like the Demon Prince. So Fulgrim is now the Demon Prince of the Emperor's Children. He's the kind of de facto benefactor of all the forces of Slaanesh. That's the only one I can remember. I can't remember. Mortarion. Mortarion is also he's the demon prince of the Death Guard, loyal to Nurgle, and so he went from being the Primarch to being their demon prince, and effectively no change in leadership style. Most of them, when they ascended, warped grotesquely out of their kind of standard human shape. Fulgrim, for instance, is a large snake from below the waist. He has wings, bat-like wings, and 4 arms. He's still very, very good looking, but he has 2 sets of horns and an afro, a white afro, in his original kind of idea or original.
He went real ghetto
manifestation. He went
like disco
real
stew.
So
please tell me he's got an
Mortarion.
afro comb in there as well.
yeah, but it's a guitar because of the Noise Marines.
Oh yeah,
Like Mortarion again, he's stayed largely, anthropomorphic. His legs and arms are as normal, but he's got 2 huge bat wings. It'd be weird to just have one. It'd be really odd. But he looks like a kind of angel of death. Angel of death and disease, and as a kind of chosen son of Nurgle, he is able to corrupt and infect everyone around him. They are all of gigantic size. If you recall, when we were talking about Primarchs, they were larger than ogres. They were, somewhere between 10 and 12 feet tall, as wide in terms of buffed up. But now, if you take that and add like a huge snake body to it, that's Fulgrim. He's enormous. Eric the Red, or what's his name? Bitcoin.
My man.
He's now, he's effectively double his size and appears as a kind of an eagle-winged Zeus-like figure, and is, very kind of metallic loinclothy and shooting spears at people. That's the most comprehensive description of Magnus I could come up with. What?
Do they all have wings?
All the
They
ones
seem to.
I've seen have wings. So,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
Bitcoin has eagle wings.
I don't get the
Fulgrim,
Bitcoin referral. What do you call him? Bitcoin.
E-money. We went from Eric the Red to E-Dog to E-Money.
E-Money to Bitcoin.
And E-Money is Bitcoin. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, that bit has just died on its arse, right? Magnus the Red, who is the Primarch that we're talking about. Yeah, he has massive kind of iridescent eagle wings, it's kind of multicolored shifting things. I'm not sure that Peter Turbo, who we've discussed previously, has wings. And Lorgar, there's not really been an image of, I beg your pardon, Borgar. There's not really been an image of him as a demon prince. But Angron of the World Eaters, the demon prince of Khorne, he's definitely got huge bat wings as well. So the Chaos Legions, at least 6 of them are led by demon princes. Horus, obviously, was Primarch of the Luna Wolves, is no more.
He dead.
Alfarius of the Alpha Legion may or may not be dead, may or may not be a demon prince. We don't really know.
He's not dead, and he is a demon prince, is what I get from that.
Yeah, and let me just say for listeners, spoilers. Keep your fucking mouth shut. And then we had Evil Batman, the Primarch of the Night Legions, or the Night Lords, I beg your pardon. He was one of the only other Primarchs to be killed. He was assassinated by an Imperial assassin, funnily enough. And because he suffered from prophetic visions, that's one of the reasons why he was so crazy, in quotes, is that he knew ultimately his own father would betray and have him killed, and that's exactly what happened. But because he could see it, he could see the assassin and sense the assassin's movements and activities, he just let her come through and kill him. And we'll explain why when we deal with the Night Lords.
What was that Primarch's name?
Conrad Kurz. Evil Batman. So those demonic princes will form the link between this episode and the next episode, where we talk about what became of the Chaos Legions within or after the Horus Heresy. But in terms of names that you should think about for next episode, we're looking at Abaddon the Despoiler, who was the first captain of the Luna Wolves under Horus, and now, 10,000 years later, is arguably better than Horus in every way. And yet is not a demon prince. He is still a mortal man, albeit a 10,000-year-old super being.
And ironically,
Abby to his friends,
D spoils things.
Yeah,
meant to be the bad guy, but instead of spoiling stuff, he's unspoiling it, isn't he?
How ironic.
In general, yes, the forces of chaos are, to a layperson, what we would think of as hell coming through into our own world, either en masse or individual possessions of psychers or whoever else, wanting thus to be able to conquer the entire planet. If you imagine that writ large across the galaxy, that's effectively what the forces of chaos are.
It's funny because the life in the Imperium of Man sounds like hell to me. It's like oppression and
it's a rock and a hard place. Really,
bring on the liberal approach of chaos, in my opinion.
Wow, he's converted already. Wow, yeah, it only took 17 episodes.
Dude, I think one of my first reactions to the Imperium of Man
Yeah.
Like in episode 1.
You have been pretty steadfast.
I don't have time for the Imperium.
Yeah.
Are you guys Imperium fans?
I wouldn't say
is the Imperium of Man generally a popular thing to be a fan of, or is it does everybody kind of agree it's?
I mean, I think
shit?
From my perspective, it seems to be the most popular one of the most popular because it's the only relatable aspect of the 40k setting. Everything else is aliens
I think
and demons.
The Imperium of Man is, even as a reader of the lore or player of the game, like the citizens, you are forced to be within the Imperium of Man. So what is the best of a bad choice? Do you want to follow this faction? Do you want to be these Marines? Do you want to be that? It's all shit.
I think for myself, I would say that it's not a desirable place to be unless you are a noble of some kind, unless you have influence over there.
But even the nobles aren't under huge
absolutely.
pressure. Like nobles are as expendable as a citizen. To be fair,
I would say that when it comes to like looking at like individual factions within the Imperium, I think it's very easy to think everything is fucked because from our perspective, we've got the proper like top-down view, the overview of the situation, and we know that it is fucked. I mean, the tagline for 40k is, in the grimdark future, there is only war.
Everything's fucked.
Everything's fucked. But
it's a very sex-heavy episode, I have to say. I don't know if we can release it.
But in the actual setting, the individual factions are, to some degree, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tara, they're somewhat ignorant of that fact.
Yes.
You know, they believe that they are fighting the good
they're
fight.
The fish in the pond.
They believe that they are right and just in what they're doing, and that they're fighting for the only good cause. So I think when it comes to choosing factions, certainly I would try to look at it from their perspective rather than the everything is fucked perspective. Does that make sense?
It does make, like, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
that's really within the Imperium.
Yeah.
For all we know, we could be living in a hellish world, but it's relative, isn't it? We think we're not.
You don't see much of that in Camborne. It's relative bliss there, isn't it?
To be fair, though, is that like you can't see the wood for the trees?
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't that the point, though? Isn't it? Like, we as a reader, as a viewer, as a consumer of the universe, it's like, fucking hell, you want to live there. But as a citizen, you don't know any better.
I think for me, the freest role you could have within the Imperium is a rogue trader.
Yeah.
But even then, you have to watch your back.
Oh, yeah.
The Rattlings seem like pretty blasé about the whole thing. They're just doing their thing. I can relate to
the little halflings.
Yes, because they're small. But like the halfling wheeler dealers, they seem like they have a pretty good time. Do you know what I mean? They just kind of, they're doing their thing.
But like, I mean, like, you know, in terms of your point, I totally get that, because that's what I was thinking when we were doing the last episode, Necromunda. You're listening to these people living in this fucking hive city that, like, occasionally the filtration systems break down and they all fucking suffocate. They can't leave. They can't go out into the waste because, like, it's toxic. I'm like, just leave the planet. But they don't know any better. Do you know what I mean? They've never known any other life. So, but, you know, from our perspective, this is just one planet that we've looked at in a massive galaxy. But to them, that's their entire world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, the fish in the pond.
Thus, as we've discussed in this episode, I think, the prevalence of chaos cults, almost every planet, including Terra, has some level of chaos cult activity where worshippers are rewarded by the forces of chaos with abilities, powers, items, what have you, that allow them to corrupt more and more. I mean, the chaos gods still haven't forgotten? They still haven't forgotten. Yeah, they still haven't forgotten how fucked over they were by the Emperor. So they're still trying to bring the Emperor down.
They're holding a grudge.
Yeah. And thus all his works. And so the creation of the Great Rift is a huge step towards the destruction of the Imperium of Man. And it's actually, the impact of it was so profound within the lore of the gaming community that they were all worried that this was the first step in a kind of end times kind of deal for 40k, where it would be scrapped and they'd go they'd Age of Sigmar 40k, but that hasn't happened.
Right. It
could. I blame demons, if I'm being completely honest.
You would. You Imperium lover, you.
Imperium lover.
I'd be a chaos something or other. Yeah. I think as I'm learning more about 40k, I'm more on the side of chaos. I'd be a chaos worshipper or a chaos marine or something chaos.
You'd be a noise marine.
Just does not turn me on.
Have you seen the noise marines?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the Emperor's Children, Fulgrim's guys, and they've got fucking guitars. And they go, and brain explodes. Right, okay, here's a question for you then, Kral.
Yeah, man.
If one of the 4 Chaos Gods was going to sponsor this podcast, what would be the best fit?
Of the big
this
4?
Specific episode, Malice.
I mean, the amount of the amount of kind of low-brow, low IQ dick jokes, it's got to be Slaanesh, doesn't it? You know what I mean? They came across, not literally, and so
I didn't use that one this episode. What are you talking about?
You didn't.
You didn't.
I was a good boy.
No, you didn't. But
Kral did.
You know where I'm coming
You
from.
said something and Kral went, not literally. You didn't even recognize it. You didn't acknowledge it. Okay, Slaanesh.
I mean, I was going to say the highlight for me today in this episode, or rather the low point for me today in this episode, was the Clitotrix Maledictum.
Precisely. I'm doubling down on the Slaaneshi sponsor.
Right, shall I wrap up?
Yeah.
All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, merchandise, and you can sign up for the Laying Down the Lore newsletter, which includes exclusive info about upcoming releases, behind-the-scenes chat, and some extra lore not covered in the podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard in this episode and you want to support us, head over to patreon.com/laying down the lore 40k and sign up today for as little as £3.
I agree.
This will give you access to our Discord server so you can come and tell us exactly what you think of Kral and his anti-imperial Huzma what's it. We'll be back again soon, displaying just how little Chris and I know. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
I promise I'll be less existential in the next episode. Love you.